Well, Matt, Happy New Year to you. Before we get everything started, we want to just send our, prayers to everybody impacted by the California wildfires here in LA and Pacific Palisades. Thankfully, Burbank is not affected by it, but the air is still kind of bad. But Pasadena has been affected too, so I don't know why we're getting wildfires in January.
Yeah, and I was very concerned. I remember watching the news about the wildfires in California, and I was so concerned. I reached out to you directly just to ask if you were okay. But thankfully, you're all right, and I'm hoping that other people in Southern California can get back in their homes comfortably.
Yeah, I know that they would want to get their minds off of this and just hear us talk about sports.
Exactly, exactly.
So, anyways, we'll start with the NFL. Let's start with our Week 18 recap. The New England Patriots they should have not they should have not beaten the Buffalo Bills, but they did anyways because Josh Allen just only played one half.
Yeah, it's one of those things where the Bills knew they were in the 2 seed. They were locked into where they were going to go. Patriots were done. And I think what really is head scratching to me, and you could probably elaborate on this, the Patriots had the number one pick in their back pocket and they threw it away. They went from 1 to 4 by beating the Buffalo Bills. And I don't know if that was the exact final straw that got Gerard Mayo fired, but Robert Kraft had like other answers to that.
Yeah, I think this was a Robert Kraft decision to fire Gerard Mayo. And speaking of the Patriots, they just completed their interview with Ben Johnson for their head coaching job. But we talked about it. I think it's likely that it's going to be Mike Vrabel that's going to be the next head coach of the New England Patriots.
And it makes sense too because he's a Patriot to the core. He played big in the Super Bowl games. He's well known. Robert Kraft liked him as a player. I mean, Ben Johnson would be nice, but I don't think New England would fit his mindset of what a team should be.
Yeah, when we make our head coaching predictions, we'll have to map that all out.
Yeah, and one of the problems with the head coaching search this year, of the 6 job vacancies, I think 2 are kind of set in stone. The other 4, you don't know where they're going to go because the candidates are poor because no one wants the jobs available, which is kind of a problem.
Kind of is a problem here, but anyways, now let's talk about a game that really was very good. And this team got robbed of making the playoffs, and that's the Cincinnati Bengals coming from behind to beat Pittsburgh. They finished 9-8, and they still did not make the playoffs.
And they ended on a 5-game win streak on top of that. Like the final 5 games, Joe Burrow and Jamar Chase were probably the best combo in football, and they didn't make the playoffs. Joe Burrow led the league in passing, and he's not in the postseason. Jamar Chase won the Triple Crown for receivers, and he's not in the postseason. T. Higgins had a solid secondary receiver role, and he missed out. Like the Bengals got absolutely robbed, and one of the reasons they did was because the Kansas City Chiefs are trying to find any excuses to why they dropped the Bronco game. We'll get into that later, but Cincy should be in the playoffs, and I think America's kind of pissed off that they aren't.
Joe Burrow in the playoffs is absolutely legendary.
He is. He is. Like honestly, I would have loved to see Bengals Bills as opposed to Bills Broncos, but it is what it is.
Well, and then you'll also talk about the Carolina Panthers beating the Atlanta Falcons. Michael Penix Jr. had a really good game, but my Madden League next year, I'm going to go with Michael Penix as the starting quarterback for the Atlanta Falcons.
That's all well and good, but I think the main story of that one was Bryce Young. He had 5 total touchdowns in that game, played really solid. His confidence is at an all-time high now to end the season, and this is all a positive step in the right direction. And I remember earlier in the year, you and I were saying on the show previously that Bryce Young needs a culture change. Well, he doesn't need that now, does he?
No, he does not, because I think Bryce Young I think Dave Tepper has invested in him.
Yeah.
Excuse me.
God bless
And
you.
also, and also too, and also to be the franchise quarterback for the Carolina Panthers. We gave up on him early in the season, but I feel like
Yeah.
next year Bryce Young will continue to improve, which I expect. And I do think that the Panthers just need to surround him with weapons and a good offensive line.
And it's all positive step in the right direction. I mean, I think all he needed, Bryce Young, was just a confidence booster from his coach, from his owners, from the players around him. He just needed a confidence boost. He needed that vote of confidence from everyone in the organization. And like I said, I think being benched by Andy Dalton was probably the best thing that could have happened to him. It's kind of similar with Anthony Richardson, where the player gets benched, he regrets his life choices, and then he comes back in the starting role and just has a fire under him. And I feel like that's exactly what's going on with Bryce Young. And you know what? It's good to see. But now the question is, he needs to carry this into next season, and hopefully the Panthers will do a good job at helping him out.
And do you think he can carry that into next season?
I think he can. I think he's going to do his part, but the Panthers need to do their part in surrounding him with talent. Because I think Adam Thielen's not going to last much longer, and the receiving core is okay. Chuba Hubbard, I think, is their feature back going forward. He's just amazing. But the offensive line is still a sieve. It needs help. And the defense isn't great either. So the Panthers have a lot of offseason chores to do. But if they see that Bryce Young is flourishing, then I think they're going to do everything they can to help him out.
Yeah, you're right. They will do everything in their power to help Bryce Young out. But let's also talk about the New York Giants. They lost to the Philadelphia Eagles 13-20. Saquon Barkley did not even play in this game. And speaking of which, the New York Giants have decided to retain both Joe Shane and Brian Daboll as both head coach and general manager next year. I know you're happy with one part of the decision that John Mara and Steve Tisch made, but I know you didn't get the Brian Daboll decision.
Well, the reason why I was happy with Joe Shane staying was because Joe Shane has hit on his last few draft picks. He's done very well. And I think the draft picks are going in the right direction. Like Malik Neighbors is probably going to be Offensive Rookie of the Year if it weren't for Jaden Daniels. He's been incredible. I like Tyrone Tracy. I liked Kayvon Thibodeau from a couple of years ago. I think that the picks are great. The problem is the quarterback position. But Joe Shane and Brian Daboll didn't inherit Daniel Jones, and that was the excuse that both of them made to John Mara, was that we need a quarterback, but we didn't inherit the guy you gave us in 2024, which makes absolutely no sense because you took him to the playoffs in 2022. So it's confusing. And Brian Daboll was really bad coaching the team this season. I thought that he should have been canned. I think the team beating the Colts in Week 17 was a joke because they lost the number one pick that way. And fans were just clamoring for Brian Daboll to go. But now that we talked earlier on before we came on the air, there is a little bit of a plan that the Giants could pull with the third overall pick in the draft. But I think that it's still miles away from, like, the draft's not until late April, early May. So there's still plenty of time. But I think I have a good vision of what Brian Daboll has up his sleeve.
Well, we got to also talk about the Indianapolis Colts defeating the Jacksonville Jaguars in OT 26-23. Here's the thing about these games between the Colts and the Jags. The Colts have a losing streak down in Duval County.
Yeah.
And the Jaguars have a losing streak at Lucas Oil Stadium. I'm not surprised that they both split the season series right there. But you know, at the same time, I think at the same time, what was really a surprise was firing Doug Peterson. And I think Doug Peterson was the fall guy in Jacksonville.
I'm going to be honest. When Doug Peterson got fired, a lot of people in Duval County, myself included, were not really surprised. And I think the reason why was because you just saw how big of a fall from grace the Jacksonville Jaguars had. I mean, think of it. 2022, they had that massive comeback playoff victory against the Chargers. And it seemed like good times were ahead. Then 2023 hits, they start off strong, and then Trevor Lawrence gets hurt, and they collapse the rest of the way. Don't make the playoffs entirely. And you figure that this year they were going to bounce back. Well, they did the opposite of bouncing back. They regressed significantly. And
in my Madden League, the Jags made the playoffs 2 straight years, and then they missed out on the playoffs this year, which cost Peterson his job.
And you know what? It's perfectly said because, Like I said, not only did Jacksonville not make the playoffs, they were one of the worst teams in football. They have a top 5 pick this year. It's not good by any means. So I know Doug Peterson is a good coach, but when you go from hero to zero in a matter of 2 years, you're going to have to suffer the consequences. And that's what happened.
Assuming in my Madden league that if Doug Peterson in real life doesn't get a head coaching job this cycle, I might have him go back to Kansas City to work with Andy Reid.
And that might be the only thing he can do at this point because I can't see Doug Peterson getting another head coaching job after getting fired in Jacksonville.
The position that I'll have for him in my Madden league for Doug Peterson is senior advisor to the coaching staff.
Okay.
Meaning that he works with Andy Reid, and then he also is a senior advisor to the offensive staff.
Right.
Like working with guys like Matt Nagy and Pat Shurmur. So, because he took a year off after 2020, which I didn't have a job for him at that time. So,
yeah,
I have a plan in place for Doug Peterson and my Madden League to still work with Andy Reid.
That's a good idea.
And he returns to Kansas City. And try to win a ring with Kansas City.
That's a good idea.
Doug Peterson and Andy Reid, I think, are great friends.
They are. I mean, obviously,
and I think if you go back to the Andy Reid coaching tree, Andy Reid's coaching tree is by far the best.
Yeah.
It starts with John Harbaugh because John Harbaugh is the cream of the crop of the tree.
Oh, absolutely.
So that's why I'm saying the Andy Reid tree is by far the best.
It is. And you could see the number of good candidates and coaches that have come out of that tree. But as far as Doug Peterson is concerned, I think him being a head coach is kind of on the back end at this point because right now he just got fired. And I think he just wants to repair his mental morale at this point because when you get fired as a coach, not only are you not getting paid and you don't have income coming in, it takes a hit at you mentally. And you kind of wonder, am I good enough to even do this anymore? But I think Doug Peterson needs a year off, and then once he gets that year off, he'll be back afloat again.
And as for the Colts, I tell you, I think Anthony Richardson's going to be their guy. I think that the decision of keeping Shane Steichen and Chris Ballard was a good choice for Jim Irsay because it just tells me he still has faith in them. Chris Ballard is a smart executive. Shane Steichen, I think, is a smart head coach.
The Colts are on a good trajectory right now. I mean, the one thing they got to do is they got to make sure Anthony Richardson is upright and moving. Because one of the problems with Richardson is that he got tired easily and he was not able to stay healthy. That was the story of his 2 seasons. But I think year 3 is like the ultimate test for him. Because the first 2 years didn't go his favor, but now this is it. If Anthony Richardson does not do well year 3, there are going to be questions in Indianapolis.
Yeah, I don't think there should be questions in Indianapolis. I think this team is very sneaky, good offensive line, great defense, and a run game led by Jonathan Taylor that really can keep the chains moving.
Yeah, but they still have a lot of tools that they got to add to their roster. I mean, the offensive line is amazing, and Jonathan Taylor is incredible, but there's something missing, and I think it's just a kick in the pants for Anthony Richardson, but the defense also needs work as well.
Well, and then you also talk about the Houston Texans defeating the Tennessee Titans 23-14. Houston was just they had an up and down midway point of the season.
Yep.
But I know that they can be dangerous, but we'll get to their game against the Chargers in a minute because I think that the Houston Texans could make a sneaky good run here.
They could. I think that they got matched up really badly with the Chargers. I think that's the last team they want to face in the playoffs, but we'll get into that later. But on the Tennessee side of things, they should just be happy that's over and they got the number 1 pick. The Texans are...
It looks like Brian Callahan will want his own guy now.
It's looking like it because it's going to be one of those things where the coach didn't inherit the quarterback that he got, and now he wants his own guy. It's one of those situations again. And I know we're still months away from the draft, but I think it's kind of a good time to get a sense or a feel of what Brian Callahan's thinking.
Cam Ward.
Yep.
I think Cam Ward would be so good for Tennessee because he would finally solve their quarterback problems.
And also, Cam Ward had one of the best arms in college this past season, and he's a class act human being. I trust Cam Ward. I think he's the number one pick in the draft.
Well, and now we talk about some of the later games. I mean, Bo Nix and the Denver Broncos just beat up on the Kansas City Chiefs. But I'll tell you, man, Bo Nix is going to be legendary.
I think that, yes, it's nice that the Broncos made the playoffs. However, I think this was more of the Chiefs lying down than Bo Nix putting the team on his back. Because if you don't
look, Bo Nix showed in his rookie year, and in my Madden League, that he's the franchise QB for the Denver Broncos.
Listen, I'm not going to deny he had a great season, but Carson Wentz and all the Kansas City backups laid down. They showed no fight whatsoever. They basically just gave this game to the Broncos. And I think part of the reason was because nobody in the AFC wanted to face the Bengals, which I completely understand, but it's kind of sabotage. And like I said,
and Andy Reid rested his starters too.
But I think, and they're going to use the excuse that part of the reason they rested with their starters was because their plane took off late, that they had a flight delay. But even with the flight delay, that doesn't mean you play that badly with your backups. Something's fishy.
Yeah, and then now we talk about the 49ers and Cardinals game. I mean, the 49ers are glad the season's done. And for Arizona, the way they finished the season, it just tells me that I think they're ready for a huge leap next year.
Yeah, Arizona had the division at one point in their grasp, and then they just couldn't hold on to it late in the year down the stretch. So I think that Arizona had a lot of positives, takeaways from this season. I think a lot of positives came out of it. Did they make the playoffs? No, they missed out. But you know what? They have a good thing going. And I think that if this continues, then I think they'll be playoff bound in 2025.
Well, you talk about the Chargers and Raiders. This was AP's final game in Vegas. I thought Antonio Pierce was the real deal there, but the Chargers just won this game because, look, they're playoff bound. Jim Harbaugh is the right coach for them now and in the future.
And I think the combination of him and Justin Herbert has worked wonders, just like how Jim wanted it. But the Raiders, yes, the team was not good. They traded Devontae Adams away. No one wants to go to Vegas. Max Crosby wants out. It's a very bad sight in Vegas. And also, not only did they fire Antonio Pierce after one season and change, their general manager, Tom Telesco, was also fired after one season. So Vegas is going through a clean sweep.
It's a Mark Davis effect at Jair.
Yep, pretty much.
Well, the Seahawks, I mean, even though they didn't make the playoffs, they came into LA to beat the Rams 30-25, but the Rams have nothing to play for.
Yeah, the Rams already had the division clinched already. This game meant absolutely nothing. I mean, the Seahawks were just trying to do whatever they could to keep themselves, give themselves a winning record, and they did that, but nothing could have been done about it. This game was absolutely useless.
Well, the Dolphins and Jets. I mean, I think this was useless in a way. Like Tua and Jalen Waddle were not active in this game. This was probably the way that Aaron Rodgers wanted it if this was his last game.
And I think that's the way Aaron Rodgers wants to go out. I think that 2 years in New York, he'll be 42 next year. I think he should walk into the sunset this way. I feel like this was his swan song, and I would be surprised if he wants to go at it with another team and try to play at the age of 42. Very rarely do quarterbacks at the age of 42 play at a high level. Brady can do that. I don't think Aaron Rodgers can.
And as for the Dolphins, I mean, I think they have a great thing going with Mike McDaniel, but I think Tua is their guy as long as he's healthy. But you know what? This has just been a series of unfortunate events for the Miami Dolphins.
That's actually not a bad way to put it. I mean, yeah, the concussion, the injuries, it not good. Not good. So, obviously, if things went their way and they were healthy, like in your Madden League, and things were fine, then maybe the Dolphins would be a playoff team. But unfortunately, injuries are a reality thing, and unfortunately, the Dolphins got a taste of that this year.
They did in my Madden league. They made the playoffs, but they just lost out on the division.
Yeah.
But also, we got to talk about Tyreek Hill a little bit. There was frustration with him about him wanting to be traded, but Chris Greer and Mike McDaniel made it clear that he did not request to be traded.
I think what happened was after the Jets game, when the Dolphins knew they were eliminated and they couldn't do anything about it, I think Tyreek Hill did express frustration, but I think Greer and McDaniels had to talk to him just to see where his head was at. I understand Tyreek Hill wants to win. I know he wants championships, but he also went to Miami for the sake of the money. And you got to remember, the Chiefs wanted to bring him back, and he declined. So Tyreek is learning the hard way that you can't have everything made for you. You got to actually go with the process. And, Tua getting injured, that's not his fault. But also, Tyreek Hill did not have a good season this season at all.
This was not a Pro Bowl season of Tyreek Hill. But
no, it's
like,
not even.
Here's the thing: I don't see Tyreek Hill being traded this off season.
No, I don't see it either. But this was not a good year for him. Between not having the good quarterback play, the speeding tickets, all the illegal shift penalties, it was not a good year.
I expect Tyreek Hill to bounce back. You know that he's right now one of my favorite receivers in the league, and I feel like I want him to be back to being that explosive guy for Tua.
Yeah, I mean, listen, he can come back from this. This was just a really bad year. And sometimes when your star players are not performing at a high level, the rest of the team falls with it. But Tua's concussion definitely was the knife that killed him. That was the sword.
It sure did. I think what the Dolphins need this offseason, they need a proper backup quarterback just in case Tua gets hurt. They need somebody to come in, win you games, get the ball to Jalen Waddle and Tyreek Hill.
Yeah, and I think that's what the Minnesota Vikings did really well. They got Sam Darnold, and he's like the backup quarterback of 2024. If the Dolphins had a competent backup quarterback, just in case Tua gets hurt again.
Because I thought Tyler Huntley was the guy, because I thought Tyler Huntley can really make plays.
Not really. I've seen Tyler Huntley play better. In the starts that he had with Miami, he wasn't great. He wasn't. They need a solid backup quarterback that they can rely on, whether it be like a Taylor Heineke, whether it be someone that deserves to be a backup. Because Tyler Huntley, the backup quarterback play was not good.
I think you got to go.
Maybe James Winston?
I'm going to say if Jimmy Garoppolo's a free agent, because he knows Mike McDaniel's offense, Jimmy Garoppolo should be the backup to Tua Tagovailoa.
And I think that would be a good fit. I just think that Miami needs to have a plan B just in case Tua gets hurt. And
I also think they need some offensive line help.
Well, that's another part of the problem. They can't protect Tua, and when Tua gets hurt, it's all because the O-line can't help him.
Yeah, I think they need some work there, but also talk about a game on Sunday night where it was supposed to be a game where everybody got their popcorn ready, but the Detroit Lions just humiliated Minnesota. But we'll talk about the Vikings in a minute, but for the Detroit Lions, I know you're confident in their abilities to make a run to the Super Bowl. Now that Ford Field, the road to the Super Bowl in the NFC runs through Ford Field.
I am very confident. I was doubting Detroit because of all the injuries they've had to their defense, and David Montgomery was also not playing the final few weeks of the season. But getting that bye week was absolutely massive because now they can get some of their defensive players back. They're going to get Dave Montgomery back for the divisional round. Jahmyr Gibbs is excellent. I love the way he plays. And you should appreciate him because he is a former Alabama Crimson Tide. But Dan Campbell and his Lions team have one goal in mind, to get to the Super Bowl. And they got everything going for them. They got Ford Field for the playoffs. They have a pretty easy draw. I think the NFC is not as strong outside of Philadelphia. I think that if the coins fall Detroit's way, I think this is their year.
And as for Minnesota, I felt like this was telling to me that Sam Darnold is very streaky. And I feel like that it's going to be the J.J. McCarthy show next year.
Well, Sam Darnold has a chance to redeem himself against the Los Angeles Rams on Monday Night Football, which we'll get into the details of that game in a little bit. But I still think that Sam Darnold has something there. I think he belongs on the roster, but maybe not the starter next year.
Yeah, because that guy can still turn the ball over a lot.
Yeah.
But when they lifted him up in the locker room, the team loves him, which I get.
Yeah, like I said, if you want to help mentor JJ McCarthy, you could, but you also got to realize that the team loves him, and I think they'd be stupid to let him go. So I want to see. Actually, I think this will be the determining factor of how if Sam Darnold stays or not. The playoff game versus the Rams.
In my Madden League, if you look at the AFC North standing, Chicago finished 10-8.
Yeah.
Or they finished 9-8 with a playoff berth, and then Minnesota was 8-8 heading into the final week of the season, and then they went 9-8.
Right.
So basically, in JJ McCarthy's first year, my Madden League as the Vikings starter, he went 9-8. So I'm thinking next year, my Madden League, the Minnesota Vikings are gonna take off with him.
We'll have to see how that transfers in real life, but I think JJ McCarthy needs to get back healthy and show what he can do.
No, I think he will.
Mm-hmm.
So we also have to talk about Black Monday. I mean, Jug Peterson, Gerard Mayo fired, and then we also know that the Bears and the Jets openings exist along with the Jags and the Raiders. So, do you have any surprises and takes on Black Monday?
So we talked about this off air that all 6 of these openings are very, very bad situations, and I know that you looked online at what analysts are saying about the job situations. I think of the 6 jobs, I think 2 of them are kind of a given. I think the Patriots are gonna hire Mike Vrabel as their head coach, and from what I understand, it looks like Aaron Glenn, the Lions' defensive coordinator, is going to be at the Saints head coach because he's been tied to that team for the last few weeks now. So I think those 2 are given. I don't like what the Jets are thinking about hiring Rex Ryan again. I think that's a big PR stunt. That's typical Jets.
That's probably a Woody Johnson being too desperate.
Yeah, that too. I mean, the Bears, I heard Pete Carroll's interested in the job. I don't think that'd be a good idea because Pete Carroll, I think, is way past his prime as a coach. I mean, he's a great coach. I think he's a future Hall of Fame coach. But if he wants to come back at age 73 and coach Caleb Williams, I don't know how good that's going to do. Jacksonville, I mean, it's of the 6 jobs out there, to me, that's the second most attractive job. But the problem is, would Ben Johnson want to go to Jacksonville? And then the Raiders are just a dysfunction. Like, I don't know who would want that job. That's the problem.
Well, you're right. You and I have our predictions set here with the Patriots and Saints, Mike Vrabel, Aaron Glenn as the 2, but we also have to fill out who the Jets' next head coach will be. For me, I'm going to pick Rex Ryan. I think Woody Johnson likes Rex Ryan. I think that Rex Ryan can slowly build the Jets back up, but I know you don't agree with it. I feel like the New York Jets, I don't think anybody wants that job.
That's the problem. No one wants the job. But one thing I also mentioned is that ESPN personalities who become head coaches don't have a good track record. Look at Herm Edwards for Arizona State. The Arizona State Sun Devils were awful. Look at Jeff Saturday, the 1 year he was head coach of the Indianapolis Colts. And now you're telling me you're going to bring Rex Ryan out of retirement to coach? It just doesn't sound right. And plus, I know Rex Ryan is a popular guy in New York because he took the Jets to 2 AFC championship games, and he was the last coach to bring the team to the playoffs. But I just don't see the magic being rekindled by bringing Rex Ryan back to the Jets. I just don't see it. I mean, I think it's going to be Rex Ryan because I don't think anyone else wants that job. And if Rex is confident that he can turn the Jets around, he'd take that job and run with it.
Yeah, we'll see if that happens, but I think it's probably going to be the same old thing with the New York Jets.
Right.
So, anyways, now let's talk about who I think next head coach of the Chicago Bears. I think they got to go with an offensive-minded head coach because I think that you need an offensive-minded head coach to work with Caleb Williams, and my pick for that is Ben Johnson.
I think that's a given. I think that Ben Johnson to Chicago makes the most sense.
But Ben Johnson, there might be a chance that he might back out. But I'm going to pick Ben Johnson. But
hey, listen. Anyone can back out of any of these jobs. That's what's kind of mind-boggling. Anyone could back out of these jobs. But I think Ben Johnson likes Chicago the best. I think Chicago has more offensive talent than the four teams who are looking for coaches. And I think Caleb Williams has shown a lot of flashes in his first year. And I think that the way Matt Eberflus and Thomas Brown handled him was so poor, but Ben Johnson could do better, for sure.
Yes, Ben Johnson could definitely do better for sure. But the next opening that we'll talk about is the Jacksonville Jaguars. People say it was going to be Ben Johnson, but I think the Jaguars should go to direction whereas they should hire either a coach an offensive-minded head coach that can work with Trevor Lawrence, or they go the veteran route.
See, this is where it gets tough because Jacksonville, I don't know who the top candidates are unless Brian Flores gets the job. I don't think Brian Flores wants to go to Jacksonville. I've heard Bobby Slowick's name pop up every now and then. I've heard guys like Pete Carroll interested, but I don't think he wants to go there. But I don't know who to pick in this case. I really don't. I can't name one person that I think would be perfect for Jacksonville.
I can't name anybody either. I can't name either that opening or the Raiders opening.
Yeah, the Jacksonville Jaguars at least have some sort of promise with Trevor Lawrence. The Raiders, there's absolutely no sugarcoat. Absolutely nothing is going right with the Raiders. So if you're going to bring in a coach, you might as well bring in someone that can at least install some toughness. And honestly, the Raiders, I know I mentioned Brian Flores earlier. I think Brian Flores, if he wants to get another head coaching shot, I think it's with the Raiders because the Raiders are known for giving people second chances. And I think that Brian Flores was ousted out of Miami so poorly, the way it was handled by Stephen Ross. And I think that Mark Davis, even though he's a terrible owner, would be more than willing to give Brian Flores a second shot.
For me, I'm going to go Brian Flores with the Raiders. I think he has familiarity with Tom Brady during his New England days, and Mark Davis can give Brian Flores another shot.
Yeah, I'm glad we're on the same page there. I just don't know what's going to happen in Jacksonville. That was you got rid of the coach that should have been fired, but now you don't know how to replace him.
What about Ron Rivera?
I've heard his name pop up. My question is, would he want to go through that again? Because remember in 2020, he coached the Commanders to the playoffs while battling cancer. I don't think at this point in his life he'd want to do that again. But then again, we've seen guys like Michael Vick coach the collegiate level, and I don't know if Ron Rivera would want to come out of retirement again. But if he wants to, by all means, I think he would be in a better situation.
Yeah, I think it's anyone's guess for who the next head coach for the Jacksonville Jaguars is.
Yeah, I don't know if anyone would really want to go for that job. It's enticing, but I don't know if anyone wants to do it.
Well, now we'll have to talk about our playoff picks. I mean, who we have going all the way to the Super Bowl.
Mm-hmm.
So we'll start with Wild Card Weekend. We'll start with the Saturday games, and we go from there. So in this game between the Chargers and the Texans, I mean, C.J. Stroud versus Justin Herbert is going to be fantastic. But I'm going to pick the L.A. Chargers to win this football game because it's the Jim Harbaugh effect here.
Well, people forget Jim Harbaugh, when he was coach of the 49ers, he was an excellent playoff coach. So I think that's going to continue here. I like this Texans team a lot. I had them going to the AFC Championship game. But between the injuries and how they've been this season, they're just not ready for that. So I'm going with the Chargers.
John Harbaugh and the Ravens host the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is the first time we're going to see the Ravens host the Steelers in a playoff game. But I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens in this one.
I'm going to pick the Baltimore Ravens in a squeaker because keep in mind, Zay Flowers is out. So I think it's going to be closer than people expected, but I think Baltimore comes out on top.
So, anyways, now we talk about Sunday's games, starting with the Broncos and Bills. I mean, no more Monday a Monday game because because of the big snowstorm there.
Yeah, that's true.
But I'm going to pick the Buffalo Bills. I just think Bo Nix is not ready just yet, but I eventually think that Denver is just probably going to come into Denver. They'll give them a game, but I think Buffalo's going to win.
I think Buffalo wins easy. I think that this is one of the easier picks for Wild Card Weekend that I can make.
Well, then talk about Green Bay and Philadelphia, a rematch of the game in Brazil. But I'm going to pick my Philadelphia Eagles to win this game because Jalen Hurts is going to play. You're going to get everybody healthy. The Philadelphia Eagles are going to be hungry for a playoff run.
So basically, looking into this, you can see that the Packers are hobbled. Christian Watson's out for the year, and Jordan Love is playing with a fractured elbow. I mean, this is kind of easy. And plus, they just cleared Jalen Hurts from concussion protocol. This is a no-brainer. I'm going with Philadelphia.
Then the Washington Commanders taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. I'm going to pick the Washington Commanders to win this game.
You know what? I agree with you on that as well. I think I've told people that I picked the Commanders and they think I'm crazy, but I think there's just something about Jane Daniels because this is also a week 1 rematch. Jane Daniels was just getting his feet underneath him in that first game against the Buccaneers. But now he's learned, his play has progressed immensely. And I think that to solidify his offensive rookie of the year status with a playoff win against one of the more upbeat teams in the NFC in Tampa Bay. So I'm going with the Commanders as well.
And then to close that out, the Vikings and Rams in Arizona, that game, I wish that game was in SoFi Stadium. I think the people in LA would love to see a game like this with all the fires that have been going on and all that. But it's a safety thing.
Yeah, hey, listen, I understand it completely. You got to put people first before priorities. I think that people have to come first, and safety is obviously priority number 1. Tickets went on sale for this game an hour ago. So if you haven't gotten your tickets for this playoff game in Arizona, you have to go to NFL.com for them.
Well, let's tell you who we have as our divisional round picks. So I have the Chargers taking on the Kansas City Chiefs.
Yep.
The Baltimore Ravens taking on the Buffalo Bills.
Yep.
And then in the NFC, the Philadelphia Eagles hosting the Los Angeles Rams. And I have Washington and Detroit.
Yes.
So for my picks in this divisional round and my bracket,
yeah,
I have the Detroit Lions beating the Washington Commanders.
Yes.
In my NFC side.
Okay.
And to play the Detroit Lions in the NFC Championship game, it's gonna be the Lions and Eagles in the NFC Championship game.
Okay, so on my NFC side, I actually had the Vikings beating the Rams. I think that because it's not in SoFi Stadium, I have the Vikings winning that one. But anywho, I have Detroit versus Washington as well, and then I have Philadelphia, Minnesota, not the Rams. Yeah. So I have in my bracket, I got the Lions beating the Commanders, and I have the Eagles beating the Vikings. So I have Lions, Eagles as well.
And then in my AFC bracket, I got the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Kansas City beating Los Angeles Chargers.
Yep.
And then I got the Baltimore Ravens beating the Buffalo Bills. And in my bracket, we're going to have a rematch of the AFC. We're going to have Ravens, Chiefs again, and then Eagles, Lions in both championship games.
So my AFC side is a little different. I have the Chiefs beating the Chargers easily because the Chargers just can't get a break from the Kansas City Chiefs. So I'm just going to take the Chiefs in this one. I have the Buffalo Bills coming out of Orchard Park and beating the Ravens. I just think that Lamar in massive games against big-time quarterbacks just doesn't show up. And this is Josh Allen's year, so why not? So I got Chiefs Bills.
Oh, I picked Ravens Chiefs because not to be biased, as a Patriot fan, I kind of don't want Buffalo going far in the playoffs.
I get it.
I don't want them getting in the Super Bowl because it'll be weird for me.
I understand that. I understand where you're going with that. But I think Josh Allen's going to be NFL MVP. So I just think that if it's his year, I think he deserves a shot at KC.
Well, and then we talk about the AFC and NFC championship game picks. Lions, Eagles. I'm going to go Philadelphia upsetting Detroit at Ford Field. You might not agree. And we'll have the Andy Reid Bowl 2.0.
Nope. I'm going with the Lions. I'm riding the Lions all the way on that one. I think it'll be a high-scoring game, but I don't think the Eagles can do it. And then the AFC side.
AFC, I got the Kansas City Chiefs beating the Baltimore Ravens.
Now, NFL rejoice. We're going to have a brand new Super Bowl champion. I got the Buffalo Bills upsetting the Chiefs. So I got Bills Lions in my Super Bowl.
Oh, man. Bills Lions. Yep. I would go for Detroit easily if that happened.
Oh, I think America would root for Detroit in that case.
So in my scenario, Chiefs Lions. My pick for the AFC Championship kick for the Super Bowl. No three-peat. Detroit wins it. Jared Goff, Super Bowl MVP.
I have the Lions winning the Super Bowl against the Buffalo Bills, and my Super Bowl MVP is actually not going to be Jared Goff. It's going to be Jahmyr Gibbs.
Why Jahmyr Gibbs? Because I always try to pick a quarterback.
Because I think that the thing with the Super Bowl is that it always comes down to who is the hottest player in the postseason. And Jahmyr Gibbs, since he took over as the lead back in Detroit, has been absolutely electric. So I had to go with Jahmyr Gibbs.
Yeah, anyways. And then we'll talk about some baseball here. So the Dodgers just got Ha-Seong Kim. And I'll tell you, what's left for Pete Alonso and also Corbin Burns going to Arizona, man. That rotation is going to be very good down in the desert. And Justin Verlander to the Giants, I don't get that.
So Justin Verlander to the Giants, I don't understand a single bit of that signing. That was like one of the more head-scratching signings of the offseason. Ha-Seong Kim should be a nice addition for the Dodgers. And then the Diamondbacks. So here was the thing with Corbin Burns. Supposedly, Corbin Burns' agent, the mighty and all-powerful Scott Boras, said that Corbin Burns wanted a $245 million contract or more. But he took less money to go to Arizona. And like you said, that I think the Diamondbacks with that postseason rotation is going to be a playoff team. The Diamondbacks got robbed out of the playoffs last year, and they're not joking around. But the fact that they were able to get Corbin Burns for less money than what he asked for, I think is a steal. And then on the Pete Alonso side of things, I heard the Angels are low-key interested, but I don't think he wants to go there. I think the Mets would bring him back.
Yeah, I think the want back Pete Alonso just because, I think that Pete Alonso is probably going to want to stay there. And then we also have other news to talk about is that the fans who grabbed Mookie Betts during the World Series have been banned from MLB stadiums indefinitely.
Ooh. You know what? Good. I know they're Yankee fans, but that shouldn't be tolerated. It really shouldn't be tolerated. I don't know what their intent was. They were going to strangle Mookie Betts and break his wrist in that game for the World Series. I remember that game. And, I'm glad that MLB stepped in and said, hey, this is not right, and we can't tolerate this. I mean, yeah, there's always that whole, I'll never do this again, but that's not going to fly. So MLB made the right move.
Mama, I'm doing this.
So I think that when it comes to this whole fan banning thing, I think there has to be a limit of what these fans can and can't do, because in a sense, like if you're giving them leeway, you're only going to allow for more accidents like that.
Anyways, we'll end the show here and have a good day.
All right, take care.